Hello, I'm John Evernold, director of Baskin, and you're listening to Without Your Head.
Welcome to the station of decapitation without your head. I'm Nasty Neal, and I'm joined by Issa Lopez, writer-director of Tigers Are Not Afraid. How are you doing?
I'm delighted. It's been such a joyful, unexpected ride, and just enjoying it.
Yeah, and Boston Underground Film Festival this Sunday. I'll be there. 6:15, the movie will play. What's it like to watch your film with an audience?
It's the best thing in the world. I'm telling you. I don't have kids, and some women directors are incredibly brave and decide to have kids and make movies, which for me is more amazing than Gravity. But the reason I didn't is because I live and breathe to be on the set, and I always thought that was the ultimate joy, and it's not as amazing as it is being on the set. The fact that you can sit down with an audience and when your movie works, and see them connect. And the amazing thing is, when a movie really, I think when it comes from a certain very, very personal place, funnily enough, it becomes very universal. And in that way, it's funny how it doesn't matter in what continent you are. It doesn't matter if it has subtitles and you're hoping they're good. You don't know. You see audiences react in the same places in very similar ways. And then surprisingly, there's a couple of places that you have very specific reactions with different cultures. But that is part of the adventure. And the great thing about it is it feels like you're watching the movie for the first time. So you're, in a way, you're reviving the joy of being on the set and sharing. It's the closest thing I've ever experienced to being able to actually sharing your dreams, to showing what's inside your skull to someone else, which is I think everybody would love to do, except when you try to explain a dream to somebody else, you can see that person's eyes dying slowly because nobody cares. Nobody gives a damn about your dreams, except if you're able to capture them in an interesting, structured, emotional way and put them on a screen. Then people care about your dreams,
Yeah.
and it's amazing. It's beautiful.
The movie's beautiful itself. I got to see it, and you said it was very personal to you. Is there anything about the movie that's from your life or people you know, or what is it about the movie
Yeah,
that's very personal?
yeah, it's funny because if you get to know me personally, and I hope we do in Boston, um, you would look at me and you would say, this is not a woman that looks like that she survived the violence of drug war, and I didn't. Thank God. I haven't. I haven't had to go through that. But one thing I had to go through was being a little girl. I was 8, and coming home and not finding my mother there, which is how the movie starts. I'm not spoiling it.
Right.
It's how the movie starts. And then you know then she never comes back. And my mother died, and it was very unexpected. It was, of course, not as tragic as what happens with these children. To put a little context, the movie is about the kids, the children that survived the drug war in Mexico. And like any war around the world, like, Syria right now, like Iraq, like Afghanistan. There's beautiful movies about kids in Afghanistan. Mexico is going through a war, and kids suffer incredibly through it. They lose their parents. They are hurt in it. And weirdly enough, unlike other wars, nobody's talking about the children in this war in my country. And I felt when I realized this, which was kind of an embarrassing thing that I hadn't thought about it before. And the reason I hadn't is because it's not in the media. And there's so much about the drug war in the media. in the world, but especially in Mexico, of course, you know. And everybody cares, and everybody talks about this, but nobody's talking about the kids. And I felt an obligation, a calling. It sounds super pretentious, but you know, I've up until that point I had only made comedies. I love comedy, and you can see that in the movie actually. And there's a little bit of it in it, and nobody was talking about these kids. So I felt that it was an opportunity to delve into a universe that I've always been fascinated with since I was a kid myself. I grew up obsessed with, you know, the Goonies and the Stephen King novels like It or Stand by Me, which is based Stand by Me, which is based on a novella by King.
The Body.
Exactly, which is beautiful. And I always longed as a kid to get together with a group of kids and go through a life-changing adventure, you know, a hero's journey in a way. And the type of cinema that I had been able to do up until that point, as much as I love it and enjoyed it, was not about that. And this was an opportunity to go there and touch a subject matter that I felt was necessary. And here's the thing. I didn't realize that I was talking about myself. I thought that because it was about the victims of the drug war, it was very removed from my personal experience. Mexico, like many third world countries, is deeply divided between the, you know, middle class and up are very privileged and stay away from the horrors and perils of people, of the working and the social class that lives in utter poverty. And we don't come a contact a lot, even though we share the space. Is a very crazy concept. And this movie takes place in that universe. I did have a lot of contact. I'm not rich at all. My father was a college professor, but I was definitely not dealing with the stuff that extremely poor people deal in Mexico.
Right.
But I had a chance to see it in a way and reflect it in the movie, precisely because I didn't have a mother. She died of natural causes. I was in part, because my father had to work so much, I had in part to be raised by working class women in Mexico. And I grew up with their kids. So I could see it up close and personal, you know. These were my siblings, on one hand. On the other hand, even though my mother died of natural causes, it was very sudden. And I never had a chance to say goodbye. And when that happens, you always drag the ghost of the person who disappeared, because you were never able to say goodbye. You were never able to look at a casket and, you know, go to a ritual. That's what rituals are for. And the main character in my movie, the same thing happens to her. She's the daughter of a single mother, unlike me, and she comes home and mom is not there and she's on her own. But the ghost of her mother is coming after her because of magical circumstances. It's a magical realism movie. But it's still the same feeling. You know, you, on one hand, you miss your mother, and on the other hand, you're terrified of her. And that's in the movie.
Also, I think part of the movie is imagination, power of imagination with children. Is that something personal to you too? I assume since your mother died young, and then you went on to create movies.
Well, you know, first of all, the real world was not a nice place for me. I doubt it is for anybody anymore. Right, you know, less and less every day, sadly. And the imaginary world was and is incredibly fascinating. And I had an overactive imagination from the very beginning, even when my mom was alive. And I remember an episode when I was put to bed and I hated it. I've always been a night person. And then I learned to read very early to be able to do something by night. And when my parents realized that I was, at 7 spending the entire night reading and then falling asleep at school, they would take away the lamps in my room. So I remember one night being in bed and just being bored, and I swear to God to this day, I know this can't be, but I swear to God that I saw those like a tiny little, half a foot sized little devil climb on my bed and stand there watching me. And there was a moment of utter wonder of, oh my God, the universe is wider than I thought, And then the other part of my brain kicking in and me screaming like crazy. And my parents coming in and going like, what? And I was, the devil was there. And they were like, okay, well, honey, we need to talk, And imagination has been a central part of my life. And I think it's at the core of this movie, how not only the ghosts are the ghosts of the dead that any war produces are coming after these kids. Not only they have to run from the very real dangers of the criminals that run this war, but also you can read it both ways in a way that they have an into the imaginary world that moves around them, like that night that I had a chance to have a peek beyond the veil, let's call it, right? And there's, in interviews and in talks with friends, and there's always most people assume that what's the fantastic side of the movie is happening in the eyes of the main character of Estrella. But if you look very carefully at the movie, you will see that there are clues that the fantastic world is very real. It's not fantastic. It's just a tiny, tiny bit beyond our reach. And she crossed the barrier, and now she can see.
How about casting Estrella? Because she's actually all the kids are perfect in the movie. I think. Was that difficult to cast because it's your baby?
Oh man,
you want these people to be perfect.
It was. Oh my God, it was so tough. It's funny that your Team Estrella. I love them all. It's like any mother. They're not my kids, of course, but
sure.
Like any mother, I will say I love them all the same.
Right.
But it's funny because audiences are often divided between the fans of Estrella and the fans of Shine. Shine is the little boy who's the leader of a very tough gang of boys that have survived this war through his wits. So let's call him, he's the Peter Pan of this story, and she is the Wendy. And there's Team Estrella. And I think it's a very interesting psychological test. It says a lot about you if you go with Estrella or you go with Shine. So it's super interesting that you picked Estrella because both of them stand for a very different view of the world.
One's more like grounded and realistic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. One stands, and that's a theme that, without me realizing it, not until I did this movie, someone who really knows me, a dear friend of mine, an actress in my first movie, said, "You see that it's the same movie." My first movie is an urban comedy about, people turning 30 and not being able to cope with that change. Imagine how different that sounds from this. And I was like, what? They're two, what are you talking about? And she was like, darling, in that movie, you have a main male character who is absolutely data and reality and harsh reality. And you have a main female character that believes in science and believes in reasons beyond our understanding, And their clash is what makes the movie. And this movie is exactly the same. you know? And I was like, wow, here I am trying to do something new. And I'm still making the same movie, you know?
Yeah.
But in a way, it's true. So back to casting. It's 5 kids, 4 boys, 1 girl. Tough, because Latin America is, okay, I'm going to rephrase that. I'm going to talk about Mexico. I don't know about the rest of Latin America in this. Mexican kids make, usually, traditionally, horrendous, horrible actors. It's true. It sounds terrible. It sounds horrible. It's true. It's true. It's just in Mexico. Weirdly enough, Mexican kids, kids of Mexican origin, grew up in a different culture, and they make for amazing actors. But there's something about growing up, either watching telenovelas or being in your abuela's house, and telenovelas are playing in the back, and you're listening to this acting style. I was able to figure out what was going on, because kids are incredible anywhere in the world. They're amazing. And but the moment that you would play with them and you would improvise with them, and then the moment that you would say action, they would immediately move into, geez, that's terrible, Mr. Smith. And that was exactly the type of acting that I didn't need in this movie. So we saw, well, not me, but my casting director saw around 600 children.
Oh, wow.
In between, from every walk. I mean, from open calls, from visiting schools, from acting schools for children, from children that had been in other movies, everybody. There was not a criteria. And then she went down to 200, and that's when I came in, and I watched the videos of the 200, and we picked 50. And I did a lot of callbacks with these 50 until I picked 20. And when I had 20, I had to recruit the help of, it's so hard to, one kid has this amazing trait and that kid has that another amazing trait. And what I did is I recruited the help of the magical, amazing mastermind, woman named Fatima Toledo. She was the acting coach behind the kids in City of God, no less. And those kids were incredible. Yeah. So I called Fatima, who is in high demand, and it's very hard to get, but she read the script and fell in love with it. So she came all the way from Sao Paulo, and we made a workshop of my house. I was homeless for a little while.
Oh, wow.
And and the parents were amazing. We were very serious. We had a very caring team. We introduced yourselves, and we said, if you're interested, we're going to be working with your kids for 3 weeks. And of these 20 kids, 5 will make the movie, and 15 will not. But they will learn and they will play, and it's an interesting experience. And the parents said yes. The parents of the 20 kids, and Fatima is tough. Oh my God, she's tough. But the amazing thing is, kids can take it. They're tough too, and they talk back and they stand up and they're disciplined. And once they trust you, they go all the way. And we picked 5, and those were the ones you saw on the screen.
Yeah. Were any of the locations dangerous themselves to shoot in?
You mean like criminally?
Either way, criminally or just like abandoned places might be dangerous to just walk around in.
I don't know even why I make the question, because the answer to both is yes. Yes. I mean, Mexico has become more and more, especially in some parts of Mexico, a dangerous place. There are other parts of Mexico that are perfectly safe. Well, as safe as any city can be, Here's a funny detail. We shot the entire movie in Mexico City, which, you look at the movie and it feels like the entire point is that you don't know what city in Mexico this takes place, because this is happening in every city in Mexico. Now, because of logistics, we had very little money, and Mexico City is the hub of everything in this country. So we shot in Mexico City, but it's such a huge city that you can find locations for anything. And the scouting process was tough because, as you see in the movie, the movie moves from a more real grounded world into a more ghost town. Nature takes over civilization, post-apocalyptic feel world. Let's call it that. So we needed both. The parts that seem more real at the beginning of the movie were shot in a very easy area of town, very easy. So we never had an incident, but we had a lot of security. That is true. And because, you have expensive equipment and you never know. We had a couple of scares, not of that kind, but of crazy people. Like in every big town, we have crazy people. And then for the abandoned spaces, when they move into the ghost town, we found some incredible locations, especially two. There's this abandoned hotel that the kids take over like their kingdom for the central part of the movie. And that's an actual huge, massive, crazy place that we had in Mexico City, in the heart of Mexico City. And I never knew. Wow. It's insane. It's just this, it's like the size of 4 very big blocks. Yeah. It's walled off. It's private property. It's been vacant forever, and it became a property of Mexico City's government. But it's a hotel that was made by a madman, a little bit like the Winchester Mansion, let's call it. But the man died before completing it. And so it's halfway made. It's not completely safe construction norm-wise. I'm not sure how it fared after the latest earthquake we had. We were all the time saying, oh, my God, let's hope we don't have an earthquake now. It didn't fall. I know that. And there were areas that we had to cordon off completely because they were not safe structurally. And we had kids, Sure, and can you imagine being 11 or 9 and being in an endless abandoned hotel and adults saying, no, you can, exactly. And people saying, no, you cannot go there. I see myself going like, yeah, sure. Look over there, and running, So we had to be careful with them because they were so fascinated. Yeah. And they loved it. And then finally we have the climax scene, which is a very high tension action scene in an abandoned spa. There's not a translation in English for those places. I lived in Los Angeles for a while, and they had these Korean baths or Turkish baths, and there's places like public baths where people go into thermal pools, and then they take steam baths and stuff like that. And that was that, but it was abandoned, and that's where we shot the climax. And that was we were worried of sanitary issues there, so we had it deeply cleaned, and then we had to make it dirty again for the movie. but it's earth dirt, what you saw there.
Yeah, it's clean dirt, exactly.
Yeah.
I'd have to say real quick is you mentioned Stephen King growing up, reading some of his stories, and Stephen King and Guillermo del Toro have really said a lot about your movie. That must be amazing for you, I would think.
What can I say?
Yeah.
I grew up in awe of these men. Stephen was, thank God he's so prolific, because I could not go through his books fast enough. And it was, it was not only Stephen, but he was high in my pantheon, very high. But he was, from Lovecraft to him, to Tolkien, to August Deller, to Lord Dunsany, to or equivalent in Spanish, Gustavo Adolfo Becker. Anything that had ghosts and monsters and skeletons in it, it was for me. Or or orcs or princes or anything, or spaceships. I was a crazy Ray Bradbury and Arthur C. Clarke and all of them. Stanislav Lem, anybody. Anything that was removed from my reality was good.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah.
So in any case, but Steve was so high there because even when I think I read the first book I read of his was Salem's Lot. I don't know how it fell on my hands. I still believe it's one of his best. And after he tweeted that, the first thing I did was run to my agent and I go, I want to do Salem's Lot. And he was like, it's gone. They're doing it. And I was like, shit. But I think I was 9 when I read Salem's Lot, and I was scared out of my wits. It's hard to scare people with vampires, and it's so hard. And he manages because it's not about vampires; it's about evil. And what blew me away with Stephen was not the scares, not the monsters, and they're good. It was the portrait of a town that seems and perfectly fine, and is completely rotten underneath. And I was 9, and it was such a discovery that literature could go into such depth of analysis of the human soul, and at the same time be fun and terrifying. And as I'm telling you this story, I'm realizing probably how much that book affects me today and how I approach. It's in a way it's what Tigers is about. It is both an exploration of society and what's really wrong with us, and a fantasy and a ghost story. And for me, that's the perfect cocktail. And then, of course, growing up later, when I was a teenager and I discovered Guillermo's work. I was like, oh my God, this man gets it. And he's Mexican. And he's doing it. And I want to be him, and I was amazed by the growth that I saw between Kronos and The Devil's Backbone, which is still probably my favorite one. It's just a perfect ghost story. I love it. And then the visual universe that he created in Pan's Labyrinth. And, and then I saw, of course, I saw The Shape of Water after I premiered Tigers. But again, he manages, right? And I told him when I met him recently for the first time in my life, I was like, I know you're so tired of hearing, because, it's his moment. I'm so happy for him. But I know you're tired of hearing you're listening to people saying how awesome you are. But listen, Guillermo, there's many things you do great, but there's one thing that nobody does like you, which is combining perfect amazing beauty with utter horror and violence. And in The Shape of Water, he manages, when you have in one movie a couple dancing,
in water,
in a musical,
oh right,
and then in water at the end, which is so delicate, and she's dancing with a fucking monster. That's amazing. But in the same movie, you have a guy who gets sick and tired of trying to heal his hand. And in a climatic scene, he reached to rotting fingers off his hand.
It's an amazing scene in the movie. It's so powerful.
Yes, it's so powerful. You can smell him at that point, And you have those two things in one movie, and he's the man who can do that, And it's a huge role model for me. So both of them, watching the movie. And I insisted so much. I was such a pest. I didn't know them. I don't know Steve.
Sure.
But I was, pestering my agents like, please send this, please send this, please. And they would. And nothing would happen. Of course not. These men, you can you imagine the amount of stuff they received? And then finally they did. And they connected. And it felt like, for an orphan girl, like such a perfect moment of having, parental blessing. Really, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. I still can't believe it.
So I want everyone to know I loved Tigers Are Not Afraid, not just because you're here. I thought it was a beautiful movie. And kind of like what you're saying about Guillermo with things that combine horror and beauty. There's a lot of scenes in the movie like the kids playing with the police tape while there's a dead body next to them.
Yeah.
That combine. I mean,
yes,
it looks
exactly.
beautiful at the same time. It's something horrific, but it's a real life horror in the movie, and I just loved it.
Thank you, because that was. I love it that not many people notice details like that. It is full with them, and it comes from while I was even writing the script, I was collecting images. I'm a big fan of Pinterest, and when people say Pinterest, you think immediately of cookies and diet cookies, weddings, and diet tips. And yeah, if you open the page, that's what you will find. It's kind of terrifying of what it says about. Sometimes women worry me. I love being a woman, and there's so many amazing things. But sometimes we women ourselves go into places that I don't understand. Me included. Me the first. Let me tell you. But the captain of that, by the way. But anyways, I use Pinterest for my movies a lot. I create endless boards while I'm writing, once an idea gets into my head and I see an image that will work for that idea, I just pin it there. And it becomes this bin. And when the time comes to make the movie, I open the magic box. And there's all these ideas that would have disappeared if I hadn't saved them. And that image of children playing with police tape with a body next to them is real. I saw a photograph like that.
Oh, wow.
And it hit me like a rock, like a boulder. And I decided that it needed to be in this movie because it captures in that moment what the hell is going on in this country. And it's there. It's subtle. It's there. Very few people observe that it's there. I'm very happy that you did. Thank you.
You're very welcome. There's also, I really like the kid sleeping in the hollow TV. I thought that was a very cool visual as well.
Yeah, I thought that it was an incredible concept that, you create, when you don't have signal, you don't, because they have power sometimes because they steal it, and sometimes they don't. They create their own stories. And then after that, and when we were editing, I watched, what is the name of that movie that Netflix produced? Is brutal and beautiful about
Stranger Things?
Soldiers.
Oh,
no. That's good though. That's good. I know about which I saw after making Tigers, and I was like, oh hell, it is, but it was a good thing because when people watch Tigers, they go like, oh my god, this is like a Stranger Things but fucked up.
But different, right? Yeah.
Anyways, no, I'm talking about Idris Elba, isn't it? And it's about children soldiers, child soldiers in Africa. It's called.
I don't think I've seen it.
Boy. Anyways, it goes to incredibly painful places, but it starts in such joy. It's by. It's not Gary Kusama. What's his name? It's Gary Kusama. Gary Kusama.
Is it Beast of No Nation?
Beast of No Nation. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I cheated and looked it up.
Thank you.
Quick on Google, but.
You should have said that. Anyways, the movie. Please watch that movie. And I saw it after finishing this, but I was like, oh my god, it has a lot of similarities. And it starts with African kids trying to sell to the soldiers a TV, an MTV, and the soldiers go, but it was broken. And they say, no, it's wonderful. Look how many shows it has in it. And the kids start making the shows inside the TV for the soldiers.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful, and it's similar to my thing, but better done. He did it better. So I was like, shit, this is brilliant, but it's brilliant. Watch the movie. It's gorgeous.
I'm going to watch it. That sounds great. And what was it like to win the awards at Fantastic Fest?
Oh my! That was the first award that the movie won, and I was honest to God not expecting it. The movie was here's a true story, and now I can tell it. The movie was rejected at every major festival, every single one for a year.
Wow!
And my heart was so broken, and then I watched The Girl with All the Gifts. I have read the novel, and I love it. It's a really good movie.
Yeah.
Based on a tough book to shoot, and I love the book. And I was like, they did a very good job. And then I saw that this movie has won the very same award I won at Fantastic Fest. And the thing is, everybody had been saying to me, not for Tigers, but for life, you have to go to Fantastic Fest. You're going to love it. It's about genre, of course. But it's growing and becoming this just amazing, strange movies out there that the big prestigious festivals are not paying attention, like New Voices, extreme cinema, a little bit what Sundance was at the very beginning. It's becoming this space, and I said, we never, because I was aiming to the prestige of, a certain regard and stuff like that. And that was a complete wrong fit, by the way. I said, what the hell, let's try genre festivals. And what happened with the movie from there on has been insane. And I don't think that would have happened if the movie had gone to, say, Berlin, and even gotten I'm not saying that Berlin is not a fantastic festival. It's just I'm saying it was perhaps not the perfect festival for this movie. And then it exploded, and it was beautiful. So that first award was amazing. And it's funny that it was the very same award that The Girl with All the Gifts won.
Yeah.
And it felt beautiful. It felt, amazing. Like, this is its home. This is its audience. And it opened the door for other audiences to approach the movie and be moved by it. And it has been a beautiful ride. It has, to this day, 14 awards from the genre circuit. And we have this year a total still 20 festivals to go to.
Oh, wow.
So I couldn't ask for more. I'm so happy. Yeah. It has given me so many gifts.
The other girl with all the gifts now. So
I am the girl with all the gifts now. I am indeed. I have to go, but
I know it's way longer than we thought.
Yeah, that happens. I know myself. Yeah. That happens. Don't worry. Right. No, it was because first of all, I don't know how to say quiet, and second, you were making amazing questions. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
No, I loved it. Thank you.
Thanks. All right.
Bye.
Hi, this is Doug Bradley, Pinhead from the Hellraiser movies, and you are listening to Without Your Head. And you'd better keep listening to Without Your Head, or you will not only be without your head, you will be without your soul, because I will tear it apart.